Hey guys, new video here. This is a video for new players who might not know about some of the cool items in PoE. Because, when you play an ARPG, even if you're familiar with the type of game, you know that, you have a spell caster, you cast some spells, you kill some monsters. You shoot a bow, all kinds of ways, you kill some monsters. You swing a big weapon, you do some cool stuff with, like melee combat, you kill some monsters. And, maybe you have, like, a summoner, and then your summons kill the monsters. But there's a lot of items in PoE that I think are really cool, and the items I'll go over, although a lot of them are extremely powerful, even after like certain nerfs and stuff, which we'll talk about, they don't necessarily have to be like the most meta or the most OP things in the game. For me, like cool items that new players should try is all about things that give like different ways to play, or that changes what you think about like what an archetype is, or what a build can be, and things that you can add to existing builds. So I want to highlight like kind of like my favorite ones since I've been playing PoE, and it'll also be a little bit of history lesson because it has like changed over time, and we can talk about like the meat to shift over time with these items as well. So let's get right into it. Okay, so these will be in no specific order. The first item that I want to talk about is the Apparatus Hooves. Now, this item was added in 2.5, so a very long time ago. And for a long time, people didn't really know what it did. It's a level 12 item, and usually with these low-level uniques, they're kind of like passed over, right? Because how powerful can they really be? And the first thing you look at when you look at boots is like, does it have any movement speed? Well, the Apparatus does have 15% movement speed, so a lot less than you'd be getting on an endgame pair of boots nowadays, especially with 3.9 coming out with like tailwind boots and stuff. But this is an amazing leveling option, and the reason for that is that it kind of changes the way you play in terms of you are not actually directly casting anything. I think that's really cool that you don't have to actually press any buttons. The way that the Apparatus Fury gets procced is that it actually is procced on footsteps, and it is scaled by movement speed, so things like Quicksilver Flask, stacking buffs, things like that. And so every step you take generates an Apparatus Fury explosion underneath you, right? The radius is pretty small. You can think of it as sometimes even smaller than some of these melee skills we have now. But the explosion is fire-based, and the boots, once you get them four-socketed, you can actually socket them with support gems, right? So things like added cold, added lightning, increased crit, control destruction, ice bite, like whatever you want. You can think of it as a spell, and then so you'll walk across the enemies, and it actually does a pretty insane amount of damage because it is with every step. So faster move speed means more steps, which means more DPS, and for a long time before I discovered Rain of Arrows twink leveling, the Apparatus was my go-to for leveling because it was so smooth in terms of you press your Quicksilver Flask and then you just walk across the enemies. They would shatter. You would have Herald of Ice, Herald of Thunder explosions going off around you, and it just feels really fun. It's kind of like a unique, a truly unique item in PoE that it's like items tied to unique skills. Unique skills tied to items in the game that generate something that you can't get elsewhere. It's pretty cool, right? So this is pretty awesome because it is cheap. Initially, like when people were using these a lot to level with and stuff, I think they were like an exalt or two. But nowadays, the Apparatus Hooves has gone way down because like the leveling methods have just sped up exponentially, and usually you can find these for a few C. So that is it's worth trying out if you want to try a leveling character and you just kind of like want to relax, watch some TV while you walk around through the X. And also they have kind of unique art, right? So that's kind of cool too. It's actually based off the boss Apparatus that you encounter in the second part of the game, right? The guy that gives a little skill point and has a little multi-phase fight, so that's also kind of thematic as well. So the next two items are kind of in the similar vein. They are both focused on granting Soul Eater buff. So we have a Xerpe's Heart, and then we also have a Soul Thirst Belt, right? And if you don't know, Soul Eater, if you ever like seen a streamer or like some YouTube video where the guy is like, like 10 stories tall, their character on the screen, and they're attacking at the speed of light, that is usually, it could be a bunch of header buffs, but it's usually tied to having header buffs and the Soul Eater. And the thing that the Soul Eater does is that it for every enemy you kill, you get a stack, and for each stack you have 5% attack speed and 5% cast speed. Now it did get nerfed a little bit because in the past Soul Eater also used to give physical damage reduction, and it also used to get elemental resist. The more important was the physical damage reduction. and so you are pretty much invincible as well during this. And so you'll reach like new heights of like speed, and like cast speed, attack speed, all that stuff, right? The things on the amulet, the other sets don't really matter. I mean, you have a little bit of added damage. The child's damage, being able to ignite, chill, and shock is like it's kind of whatever. Usually if you're having all kinds of whatever build you're using this is probably not gonna be a full full purple damage build, so like you'll just have those elements anyways. And then the Soul Eater for 10 seconds on the Zerpy's Heart, the amulet, it can be extended with things like temp chains. Important thing to note about the Soul Eater is that there is a rather large radius, probably like 30 units or so, 30 to 40 units, in which when you kill a monster, the soul goes into you. So that soul, if you have any whale skills, right, that require souls to cast them, like your haste, your grace, or offensive skills, if you have those, it will actually not give you the souls to power that skill, instead going into the Soul Eater buff. So that's kind of important. Not so important if you have a projectile skill, because like your projectiles will go outside the radius and you'll still gain those souls. But it is one thing to kind of think about. The Soul Eater as well, from the Zerpies at least, is conditional on you having the stats. So if you ever use like a Mjolnir, other things that take a lot of strength, that ephemeral garb I think it's called, getting stat requirements can also be very hard, especially if you are either poor or you don't have high levels to get like some extra plus 30 nodes here and there, or to path properly to get those attributes. So the 50% increased attribute requirement is kind of iffy on the necklace, right? But once again, you're only sacrificing a necklace slot, and whereas the belt, the Soul Thirst, is in the belt slot. So it's just like you can pick whichever one's better for you. I think the belt gives a little bit of resist. It's okay, I guess. It does have a life roll on it, and it's based on flask effect. So the Soul Thirst is dependent on, like, if you have the flask up, right, and the effect is ongoing, and you don't press another flask to like reset it, you'll just have it, right? So the strategy is to use like the longest lasting flask possible, extend that flask duration, and then you'll have Soul Eater for pretty much infinite amount of time. Not infinite, but very, very long amount of time. And so you can try either of these depending on your budget, or, well, budget isn't so much important, because the Zerpies used to be like 20-30 exalts in certain leagues, but now it's come down because nobody wants to deal really with the attribute requirements. And the Soul Thirst is like, you just like find so many Soul Thirsts all over the place, right? So they're both pretty cheap now, but in the future, things could happen that make probably the amulet spike up a little bit, because you can always upgrade the amulet in the Altar of Sacrifice with a Vial of Sacrifice, or you can get it from the Soul Thief or something, the Soul Thief, where you can get it from divination cards. There's like so many ways to get it now. And 3.9 from the trailer, it looks like there's reliquary keys again, so you might be able to get it there. So I can't imagine it being very expensive for like the next 6 months to 12 months even. So try these out if you want to get a massive character, because every kill is 1% character size, right? And if you want to attack super fast, once again 5% attack and cast speed per kill for the duration that the Soul Eater is up. It does reset. You're just going to be flying everywhere, and this is it's on a level that you just can't get by leveling up or just buying gear that's not a headhunter. Okay, so it's like impossible to get this this kind of like speed and juice anywhere else. Okay, let's talk about the goal. Now, the goal is also maybe even more recently more near and dear to my heart than the Casparis Malice, because the goal is one of these items that before it was complete trash. The unique effect that you have, they're kind of like gloves of worship in Diablo, but the unique effect was actually recently added to it to make it kind of like an amazing item for mapping and just for like general like gameplay, even for leveling and stuff, right? So as you know, you probably already know where all the shrines are, but the goal not only buffs, right, and extends the big shrines that you click within a map, whether you put domination on the map or it's a natural one, it'll vastly multiply those and keep them on you for longer. But it also spawns like mini versions, okay, like little versions on the ground that are marked on the mini map for you to pick up, that are the same as all the ones, except for you can't get the divine one, you can't get the spell echo one, and I think that's it. Yeah, you can't get those two. And what those little shrines, you'll constantly have like these like the lesser acceleration will be like 10% action speed, like 30 prosh speed. You know, you have the impenetrable shrine, which is a shield, which will be all kinds of defenses. You know, brutal shrine is just like damage and knockback, stun duration, things like that. Replenishing is just like regen. The resist is max res as well as total res. And remember, the goal buffs these by 75%. So like my favorite ones are obviously even getting the common ones, which are the resist shrines, because you get 3 max res, right? That's like insane. And then you know, if you get like the resist shrine, you're at like 90%, you know, 90% max res automatically. You know, everyone's touched an acceleration trying to felt that speed. So this, it spawns the it does have a cooldown when you enter the map, right? But the cooldown, I think, is like 20 seconds until you can get your first one. But the shrines last a long time, so you'll stack up multiple of the lesser or the massive ones, and it just makes the game so much fun. Another reason is that this helmet alone is like not bad. I mean, it's got life, it's got a big resist, it's got like ES evasion, which are very good colors for most builds. And then additionally, the goal is common. It is extremely common. It's very cheap. Obviously enchants will make it more expensive, but usually if you want one, you can get one of these items. And the shrines that it like what the helm is good for is that if you don't have like a specific helm, very few builds these days use a mandatory helmet, right? And so you can just swap out your helmet with the goal, and overall I think you'll actually be faster and you'll be having more fun. So this is something that, because of the price of it, is like, you know, 1C, right? It's something that I think every new player should put on, even while leveling, even while playing their maps, and see if they like clicking on the shrines that spawn and seeing the power that comes from that and the fun that comes from that. I don't think you'll be disappointed. It's one of my favorite items in the entire game. Okay, so next item is Death's Oath. Now, I always remember like Chris Wilson giving like an interview, and he said, like, you know, PoE should be a game for all kinds of people, right? You have the hardcore players, but you have the kind of person that just comes home, they want to watch some TV, they want to watch some, if they're degenerate, they're gonna watch some anime, and they just want to like chill and have a relaxing time in game. Okay, so with Death's Oath, you can actually do that, and it is both a cheap item, it is a solo self-found obtainable item because there's div cards for it, and it's really cool in how it works. Now, the Death's Oath, if you know what Righteous Fire is, you know, Righteous Fire is a burning a circle. You walk around, everything dies within it. It's big damage. This is basically Righteous Fire with a slightly less upside on the damage, but there's no maintenance. So Righteous Fire, you know, these days you gotta use some kind of like, you know, you gotta use some kind of like mana regeneration memes with the enduring flask. You gotta use some like a big fire res. You gotta like do your tree to a certain way. You gotta have like max res. You gotta have like all this like weird stuff, right? And for a new player, that can be really daunting. With the Death's Oath, is actually pretty easy to do, because you know, you can go CI, you can go life based, depending on how you set it up. You have the flexibility there, and then also the Death's Aura is a little bit nerfed because they nerfed some of the AoE nodes on auras, but it is still extremely strong because the skill is in the armor. You don't need any six links for it, because usually how it works in PoE is if a skill is inside of an item, then the sockets are what matter. As long as you have a support gem that works with it in the socket, it will apply to the thing, and that's how it works with Death's Aura. So Death's Aura, think about a Righteous Fire that is Chalice based. That's pretty cool. You can scale it with like Aki. You can because you're scaling the Chalice damage, you can like have profane blooms, you can explosions. In the video above, this is MB Extreme's video. You know, he's making work of the pops, as we call them, like the explosions, as well as the Herald of Ass, which when the pops overkill, it prolifts the Herald of Ass. You can also do things with Storm's Gift and like Impulsas, and then you can have like Herald of Ice even, if you want to. I'll talk about those items actually later on in this video. So Death's Oath is like a less maintenance purple Righteous Fire. Really good for lazy players who want to like farm. On your single target, you might be lacking unless you have some supplementary skills, but yeah, it's a really cool build, and I think a lot of people will like how it's technically it's technically like a 7-link, although it's hard to find the support gems for it, because, you know, it's sometimes with dot builds you just can't find the the big support gems. But in the future, they're always adding more support gems, so yeah, that could be pretty cool. So yeah, try this out if you want a lazy playstyle and you just want to walk around and kill stuff. This next item holds like a really special place in my heart because it's an item that has been kind of used since it came out. It's starting with like the discharge days, and now you can still go cast on crit, and they've recently buffed it. It is the Casparis Malice jeweled foiled. Insane item, right? It's actually a community developed unique. If you don't know, in PoE there used to be a system where you could pay $1,000 to design a unique, and later on like too many people were doing that, and it cost them like a lot more than that, so they raised it to $2,500 to design a unique, and then now you can't do it anymore because it both costs them too much and it's too much time like spent for them, right, to develop these community uniques. So this is designed by an actual player in the game, and they also designed the Casparis Will, and they also designed the Iron Heart and Iron Fortress, which we won't talk about those items, but let's talk about Casparis Malice. Okay, just like going over the base stats now. Let's talk about the things that don't matter too much, right? And that is like the added damage. I mean, added damage is nice, especially if you have a skill that has, let's say, more than 100% effective added damage, because as you know, like take a look at like a Hatred Watcher's Eye that's like crit based, and that might be like 1 or 2 exalts. But then when you add on a cold damage, a flat roll, which like isn't even that great, it becomes like 50-60 exalts, right? So this cold damage is like, it's okay, but this is not why you're getting the sword. I mean, the attack speed is kind of nice as well. The intelligence requirement can be hard to hit. It seems like a lot, right? You need 257, but because you're usually cast on critting spells are blue, and usually the blue skill trees, as I'll call them, are very intelligence heavy. It shouldn't be that much of an issue. The more of an issue might be the dex, right? The dex is very high on a jeweled foil, 212. So those are some of the stats there. And then of course 6% increased critical strike chance. This is not a more multiplier, it's just increased on top of what you have, multiplying your base. So I guess that's okay after the first hit, but usually you'll be killing things on the first hit anyway, so it's okay, I guess. A little bit better on bosses. Now let's talk about the massive explicit on this item that has kind of defined entire leagues. Okay, so it's trigger a socketed cold spell on melee critical strike, right? Any melee crit. It can be an auto attack, it can be a cyclone, it can be, I mean, it could even be a flicker strike, I guess. But usually you're going to be looking at things like shield charge, and you're going to be looking at things like cyclone. Now what this does is that if you ever seen a cast on crit build, which I would say is one of the iconic builds of PoE, cast on crit is basically you just what you're going to be doing is, whenever you attack fast enough, just a billion explosions are going to go across your screen, right? And you're going to trigger all the socketed skills that you have. Well, in this case, you can also have a cast on crit gem. So this is just added on top of your cast on crit. So, and you can have 2 of these weapons, which is like insane, because you have your cast on crit in your chest or something. You have 2 of these weapons that have 2 different cast on crits. And I know it has to be like a cold spell, but the iconic one that was done with this was discharge, which you can still do, but now like things that have bigger reach, like things like you can have like freezing pulse, you can have I mean, you could even have like ice nova, you can have glacial cascade, right? Very, very strong skill, by the way, in this item. And so it not only gives you a variety of things to like shoot out of your character and to customize your character besides your main cast on crit, but it's just kind of a cool bursty playstyle, right? Like by attacking the enemy, you trigger hella skills. And this item was actually, when it came out, it was able to proc the cast on crit 10 times a second, right? 100 millisecond delay. They nerfed it to 250 milliseconds. So instead of 10 times a second, because they thought the discharge was too strong, it got nerfed to 250 milliseconds. Oh man, feels bad, but it was still very good. And then they recently just buffed it. So now instead of 10 times a second, it's 150 millisecond cooldown. So from 250 to 100 to 150 milliseconds per cooldown. That's between 6 and 7 casts per second on each of these weapons. And if you use cyclone with it, you have a more multiplier to your cast speed. The cast speed is so fast, and especially with all these buffs that you'll have, all these charges, all these stolen mods or whatever, there's no way you don't hit that cap on both these weapons. So you could use one, you can use other cool shields and stuff if you want to shield charge, but using two of them really gives you a play style that's like kind of unlike a lot of the other skills where you click your right click and you shoot at a thing, or like you cast a thing, or you slam at the ground. This is like you right click and like everything explodes around you. It's really cool. Highly recommend you try this. Really bad ones of this in the past few leagues are like in the tens of C. A really good one might be like 150, 160 C, right? Maybe one exalt for the role that I would look for is 14% attack speed, right? Because you want to generate that attack speed. That's a local modifier, which means that it's kind of a more multiplier across your skill tree as well. So definitely try a build with this weapon. I can't say enough about this weapon. It's just amazing. All right, these next set of items is a set of gloves. It is a set of it is a belt. There are other things that you can use to get rampage, like rampage items. For example, the Invictas and other things. But the reason I'm not going to talk about those is that these are the most common and the easiest to fit into your build without completely like screwing up your build, or if you're a new player, like not knowing how to like weapon swap and stuff like that. So these are items based off of Rampage. We have a Null and Void with the gloves, which is, I guess, my personal favorite out of all of them, because you don't really need that much crit anymore, and having life is nice and defensive is nice. The Shadows and Dust and the Flesh and Spirit. The Flesh and Spirit is, I would say, widely regarded as probably the worst of all those, but it is the cheapest in terms of getting a corruption on them. And then you have the Bisco's Leash, which is often one of the first purchases for like 50, 60, 70, 80 C in the start of a league, because the belt is like pretty good itself, and it has Rampage. So with these items, what we're looking at is these are called Rampage items, and Rampage is a stacking buff. It's like a kill streak. Diablo actually stole the idea and put it into the new season 19 as the entire league, which PoE had like 3 years ago. So the mechanics behind it is that every kill you get, right, is on I believe it's a 4-second timer, and as long as you kill someone within that I think it's 5-second timer actually. Yeah, I think it's 5-second timer. And as long as you kill someone within that time, it'll keep stacking, right? And with maps these days, it's extremely easy to get up to the maximum of 1,000. At 1,000 stacks, you're going to get 100% increased damage. You're going to get, I think you're going to get 20% move speed, right? It's basically 1% move speed per 20 stacks, and then it's 2% damage per 20 stacks, right? And that's kind of cool and all, right? Like getting free move speed and damage is great, but what's really cool about this is the bonuses, right? So between like 15 and 520 kills, what's going to happen is you're going to get all kinds of crazy stuff happening on your screen. You're going to have animated weapons, you're going to have corpse explosions, you're going to have stun spears, you're going to have stun novas, you're going to have like cyclones of things going around. There's like so much crazy stuff that happens on the screen, and if you lose the stacks, it's fine, because when you stack it up again, you're gonna get all these cool effects all over your screen that it just looks amazing, and it is pretty effective. Stun spears and all the corpse explosions can be very big damage. And I think it's one of the few things that can add like so many variety of effects and explosions and damages around your build, no matter what build you are, right? So you could be like, you could be a minion build, you could be a bow build, you could be a melee build, you could be whatever, right? And you're still gonna get all the benefit of these explosions. It's really badass, and I highly recommend you try it. It's a very old league. Rampage is an extremely old league, but it's still readily available in the game, and I think that new players who try this out will be pleasantly surprised at like the cool effects that happen and the power increase throughout the entire map. And it's just kind of cool to have a timer running in like the top left of your screen, so like it makes you maybe a little bit faster because you want to like not lose that bonus. So yeah, definitely try out any of the Rampage items, add it to your build, easily swappable for like some of your items. Just put it on for your gloves and then take it off if you don't like. All right, next item is kind of deviating in the fact that it's not like a cool skill tied to an item or something that changes the gameplay. It's more of like the min-maxer's dream item, right? And that is the Eternity Shroud. Drops off of Uber Elder. Will be harder to get in the future because in 3.9, you're looking at less encounters of Uber Elder and Shaper overall. And so what it does is that this item, at first glance, you're like, yeah, it seems okay. It's a little bit more damage, right? but it is because of the conversion mechanics in this game that make it so crazy. So if you imagine like if you have like 5% more Chow's damage, right, for every equipped piece, let's say you have all your pieces equipped. Let's say you have like, I don't know, 10 pieces, is it? Let's say you have like 10 pieces. Okay, you have 50% more damage, and then you have only physical damage. Then that's 50% additional damage, right? But then if you convert all your fizz into lightning, okay, then what you're going to have is you're going to have 50% multiplied by the physical and then the lightning, right? If you can somehow convert your lightning into cold, you get all three. You get your cold into fire, you get all four. You get your fire into Chow's, well, that doesn't really matter. But so through these conversions, obviously you're not going to have 100%, okay? But the multiplier on the Eternity Shroud will multiply every single stage of conversion for the percentage that is converted, and it just stacks ridiculously, right? As well as ignoring the resist. If you look up some of the bosses in the game, they do have like, 10, 15, 30 Chow's resist if you look on PoEDB. And when you ignore that, you are doing more damage still. So you have the more damage multiplier from the Eternity Shroud, more damage, but then once all your items are shaper backgrounded, you will ignore that resist, and then you'll do even more damage, right? So it's like so much dipping into the damages. It's kind of crazy. Now, the reason that this item I choose to include, although I personally don't use it that much, is because it gives the player that wants to like really micromanage their gear something to do. It's not easy to get, shaped, call it Brotherhood, shaped pyres. These things are very expensive. Well rolled, especially corrupted turn shot, is very expensive. Getting the well rolled like gloves, helmet, all these weapons. It's just not easy, and it takes time and it takes effort in the league to get all these things. And so that's why if you're someone who's really nitpicky about like, I want something cool to do, I want something to farm for after I get like my base items, right? You don't want to just like stop playing when you're level 85 or something. This is the item for you. It adds both a significant degree of damage for the money that you're investing. One of the few types of builds that can do that, right? And what I mean by that is that, if I have a Tornado Shatter and I spend another 50 exalts, I don't really feel like I'm getting 50 exalts more of damage or like effectiveness. But if you spend 50 exalts on your Eternity Shroud gear, you will actually get that damage on the bosses that matter. You know what I mean? It's more of like the ratio is better when you spend on Eternity Shroud if you want to do like boss killing or like content that needs that on-demand damage. And the added bonus is that all your gear will look super cool because the background will be all holographic shaper background. That's pretty cool. So try out this item if you really want to like min max your gear to the next level, right? It's super good. Preferably you take this starting with a physical skill like Divine Ire, but it's also possible with like cold, starting as cold skills or lightning skills. That's fine as well. You just will get a little bit less, but still kind of cool. This item right here is the iconic item of PoE. It is the Headhunter. It steals all the rare mods for yourself, and I don't even know what to say on this item. You just look on the screen. This is the only true chase unique left in PoE. If we're talking about price, there's other things that come close. Half the price, man, 3/4 of the price. Well, depending on the league, sometimes like in Legion it was like 150 to 200 exalts. Now, you might be wondering, why would I recommend this to new players, right? Because new players won't be new players for long, right? Like after a little bit, you can start seeing the kind of playstyle that you enjoy, and you can start like adding some bigger goals, right? Whether it's level 100, whether it's 40 out of 40 challenges, whether it's to acquire a Headhunter, which these days is not actually that hard. There's multiple methods to get it, and it's really an item that is kind of divisive. On Reddit, which is the vocal minority, they don't really like it, but for most people, it is something they farm for right away. They blast maps, they go hard in the first week of the league to get this item, and it just brings the next level of power and fun to your character. So if you're running a Beyond map, you can think of like 1000% move speed. Double Beyond map, it's if you have a good build, it's not unheard of to get 2000% move speed. Damage cap that we found out in Legion League, so you can actually hit damage cap very easily with the physical skills. It's like 2 point something billion damage per second for these skills. And yeah, that's all I'll say about it. make this one of your goals to try it out so that you're at least informed about the belt without just believing what Reddit might tell you, right? Because there are certain builds that are not so good with headhunter. So for example, summoner builds, you just look at the speed, and then you'll have things like totem builds, mine and trap builds, and I guess like did I say minion builds? And dot builds. Dot builds are very bad with tranquility, which is an anointment. If they keep anointments, it could be pretty good, but still not as good as the hitting builds. So yeah, try out this belt. It's amazing. Okay, Poet's Pen. So Poet's Pen has kind of fallen out of favor a little bit of the nerfs, because there were leagues when you could just like hold down the right click button with the Poet's Pen and just completely obliterate every boss in the game. You'll never die because you have the Xerpes Flask combination. And although it's been nerfed, I think Poet's Pen deserves a mention because like these automated skills are really cool, right? Like the Casparis is kind of automated in terms of you're still attacking, but you unleash like a big damage, a big cascade of damaging spells. And the Poet's Pen is kind of the same. So the Poet's Pen, basically you can hold two of them, and you can socket like all kinds of skills in there now. Like the video you're seeing right now is not the classic VD, because nowadays to get that level of VD, you might do different ascendancies. It might be a little bit more complicated, but just know that Poet's Pen is something I think that new players should try or follow some build guides for, in terms of how cool it is, because it casts from the pens, alternating, and it can generate some nice combos, right? The old combo was obviously cool because it was an unearth. Corpses will go out, the volatiles in the other pen, boom, the volatiles kill the volatiles explode from the corpses, and there's some nice synergies there. It also has some scaling, so items like Onigorochi and all these like and even what's that beyond weapon, like the big two-hander, it's a great sword, I think it's called Edge of Madness. Things like this that scale with you in a small way, I think are also cool, because it's like a little bit of power creep just for leveling up, and you do get plus to levels for like certain level thresholds. So Poet's Pen, although nerfed and not as meta these days, is still a very interesting and cheap item to try out if you want a playstyle that's kind of automatic. You hold down the button, you can travel across the screen while doing damage, and it's just kind of a unique item to PoE. And hopefully in the future we see more Poet's Pen built, because I think the nerf I think was a little bit unwarranted, because they nerfed the flask with it. But you know, that's a video for another day, maybe about nerf videos or something like that. So try out Poet's Pen, super cheap. There's a divination card for it, which is actually interesting because the divination card is a picture of D. Clara, which is a PoE streamer. I love her so much. Okay, but that's neither for here nor there. Alright, next item is a Light Poacher. Now, Light Poacher has been nerfed significantly, both in the projectile speed and stuff like that, but the Light Poacher is still, I think, kind of a crazy item in terms of it gives you a free skill that activates without you having to do anything. And the item itself has up to two abyssal slots, which can empower your build. But what you'll see on the screen here, the Light Poacher are the green balls flying out, and that happens with the spirit charges for every abyssal jewel affecting you, but it is automatic. So any skill you press will trigger one of these bursts, right? So you can see the coverage, you can see it starts as physical damage, so you can convert it. It is affected by the support gems that are socketed in the helmet. And I think that if you have like some garbage helmet, and you should probably try a Light Poacher, okay? Because the Light Poacher might bring like a little bit of extra coverage. It'll look really cool, and it gives you new ways to play around with the burst, right? Because the burst can, remember, they hit their physical base, so you have all kinds of mechanics that go into that you can kind of figure out. And so it is like a really cool looking free MTX as well. And I think the projectiles are still okay. I might actually use it next league for certain things. Okay, the item you see here is a Storm's Gift. The item itself is not that impressive. What is truly impressive about this item is the chains of shock that you can do, right? So enemies you kill are shocked, and they prolift the shock around them, which allows for chains not only on your more vanilla skills, but as you'll see in this video with the Blight, dot skills cannot usually do Herald of Ice. They cannot prolift big explosions because they are dot based. And they can't shatter things like that because it is like dots don't hit, right? But now with any dot, if you use Storm's Gift and then possibly an Impulsas and then possibly Call the Brotherhood, you can actually with this item have immense screen clear as well as explosions, corpse cleanup, big hits, right? Hits are important for stun as well, for all kinds of builds that are dot related. So I think just because of that, turning dot builds into hitting builds is like a mechanic that is just like, it's just like so awesome what you can do with that. So I won't say any more about this because you can just watch the video and see like how, like the biggest question you would get is like, how the hell are you exploding things and shattering things as a dot build? Not just any dot, like it's a Chalice dot build, right? And so Storm's Gift enables that. You can do it with Righteous Fire, you can do it with Death's Oath, you can do it with any dot skill. Okay, it's amazing. Try it out. They're super cheap depending on what roles you want. The implicits don't really matter that much, and I think that you'll see a huge increase to your map clear. Alright, this next item might be coming back into the game as like a Coral League someday. Right now, the current only way to get the Explodey weapon, as we call it, which is an explicit on one-handers that says enemies killed explode for 3% of their max life as physical damage. That implicit is currently only on the Nebulous, which is why I'm showing the Nebulous. If Synthesis comes back, there will be a way to probably get rare items with this implicit. Two-handers and even bows with it will have a 5% instead of a 3%. Okay, so keep that in mind. And this item is not so much like a unique item. Once again, we're only talking about the implicit, but because the Nebulous is the only way to get it, we'll talk about, we'll just call it this item as for now, right? It is very expensive currently, but the physical explosion is different than other explosions, okay? Because right now, if you explode something, let's say you have a Profane Bloom, right? The Profane Bloom cannot actually continuously chain on itself, right? Because first of all, it's chance based. So even if you curse the enemy, you have like I think it's 25% chance. Obliteration wands are also chance based, and other things like you have to do the killing, you know what I mean? So because this is like worded a little bit differently, the only condition for this explosion is that the enemy dies. If an enemy dies while you have this equipped, this implicit, it will explode in a physical explosion. And physical explosions for the newer players out there is the best kind of damage because it can be scaled by conversion. It can be scaled by buffs that say like percentage of physical adds extra, and it can chain on itself incredibly easily. So in the video you'll see over here, you'll see how it chains to a toxic sewer, and I don't even know. I'm just like, wow, it just killed all the things without me having to touch anything. And that level of clear when mapping is mostly what people will be doing for the end game is just is currently unrivaled, and I hope it comes back in more ways than the Nebulous. But because it's like kind of hard to get right now, this is kind of like a chase item that maybe you one day like aim for to try out if it becomes cheaper or if it comes back in the form of rare items. Alright, this last part is going to be like a few honorable mentions that I thought were cool, but not like cool enough to include in like the main list. And those are going to be the Thief's Torment for a leveling item. It is going to be the Whispering Ice because it's a skill granted by an item. It's a pretty nice spell. It's a 7-link, as well as the what was the other one? Oh, and the Watcher's Eye, because the Watcher's Eye, it will be more rare next league, so it's kind of a chase item, but it actually brings your build. It kind of like seals. It kind of completes your build, right? Without a Watcher's Eye, your build is much less powerful than it could be. For one jewel socket, sometimes that's 2 points. The Whispering Ice is nice because, like I said, it's a 7-link. It's on the staff itself. You don't need to 6-link it, but it's cool because it's a unique spell. It's like Firestorm but with ice, and then it has a intelligence stacking scaling. So it's cool that you can also kind of min-max your gear to have the most intelligence possible. The skill itself is not like these days in the speed meta of mapping, it's not really the fastest, but it is really cool looking. And yeah, and the staff is really cheap, so if you haven't played it, you might really like this skill. The Thief's Torment is an item that I recommend every new player try out while they are leveling, as long as they have a like an attack-based hitting build, right? Because the Thief's Torment is one of those items that you look at it, right, and it's kind of confusing. You're like, I can only wear one ring, all right, and it kind of sucks, right? But you have to remember it has all res, right? And it has 2 stats on there. So it's got the 10% on the implicit. It's got the up to 24% for a perfect roll on the explicit. So you add those together, you can get close to like, what is it, 102% total res while leveling. That's insane, right? And it's equivalent at level 30. Now it is attack based, but for every hit on an enemy, and it stacks up for the groups of enemies, you are going to get up to 60 life, and then you're going to get I think 30 mana back on it, right? 30 mana. And so your life bar is always going to be full as long as you can find enemies. That's why, like, you know, Cinderswall and things like this are so powerful these days, because the recovery is so good. And when you're leveling, you will probably never die as long as there's something to hit with this item. It allows you to face tank. It completely removes the need for a mana flask or any kind of mana management. And I mean, there's a little bit of magic find, a little bit less curses on you, but those are secondary to the main, like, just power leveling, like not worrying about any kind of management kind of playstyle, right? So that is an honorable mention as well. And I guess another thing I would want to say is the Shackles of the Wretched. But the Shackles of the Wretched ties into the Combs roots, unless you are a Juggernaut. So the Shackles of the Wretched allows you to, in a perfect scenario, if you have a Temp Chains enchant or a Glorious Venite, getting that curse effectiveness, you can multiply the buffs on you by 4 times, okay? And so you think of your Flask lasting 4 times longer, think of your Headhunter buffs, your Inspire Learning buffs lasting 4 times longer. I guess Inspire Learning would be could be another like honorable mention here. It's just like, it's a smaller Headhunter, it can stack the same mod, it can steal the same mod multiple times. And so the Shackles of Wretch Combs combo, usually proc by a Herald of Ice or a Herald of Thunder, inside the gloves with a curse on hit, Temp Chains, will make it so it just lasts forever, right? Because the Herald of Thunder keeps rolling on its duration, so it keeps applying it back to you, so you'll never like not have the Temp Chains on you. And then the Combs Roots negates that that negative penalty of slowness, and so it just feels really good to stack things and be like very powerful the entire map for everything that you have up. And when you're looting lots of stuff, your buffs and your charges and all that will stay on you. So that's another item that is definitely worth a try in your PoE playtime. So that's I guess that's the video. Those are some things. I probably missed some things, you know. I'll just like going based off of like what I really like in this game. I probably, if you have any things you want to include, maybe we can make another video. But yeah, that's it. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys if you guys have any questions, stream every day on Twitch, twitch.tv/qtalk_. Okay, bye everyone. Thanks for watching the video. Bye.